Yes, a fourth worst YouTubers video. Because this site just seems to have no end of abusers, rapists, sadists, predators, murderers, and mass shooters. It feels like I'll never run out of them. So far I've covered 32. The first video actually had 13, but I had to cut 2 of them from the YouTube upload, but the full version is on BitChute. And now, I'm adding 8 more to bring the current total to 40. Here are 8 more of the worst YouTubers. Ruby Frank, known to many as the face of the now defunct YouTube channel 8 Passengers, had once painted a picture of family life in Utah, complete with the usual parenting insights, stories about her children's day-to-day challenges, and regular vlogs capturing everything from birthdays to chores. Her channel racked up a significant following, with viewers turning in to see how a household of 8 navigated the ups and downs of raising kids. On the surface, the videos featured gentle discipline, structured schedules, and a particular emphasis on obedience, all elements she portrayed as central to her parenting style. As the channel grew more popular, some viewers started voicing concerns online, pointing out instances that they believed were unusually strict, such as children being denied food for extended periods, or sent away to sleep on bare mattresses for what many considered minor mistakes. Others pushed back, claiming that strict parenting doesn't automatically mean something nefarious was happening behind the scenes. Those conversations bubbled up in comment sections on social media groups and in various forums dedicated to discussing family vloggers. For a time, Ruby continued uploading videos as usual, seemingly unfazed by the criticism. In 2022, 8 Passengers suddenly stopped posting, leaving subscribers uncertain about what might have prompted the abrupt end of daily content. In the months that followed, Ruby appeared to shift her focus. She started appearing on a platform known as Connections, run by her business partner Jody Hildebrandt. The material presented there concentrated on counseling and parenting advice, though critics described some of it as alarmist or extreme, especially when it came to disciplining children or handling what Ruby and Jody termed, quote, rebellious behavior. In August 2023, the conversation around Ruby Frank took a drastic turn when news broke of her arrest on charges of aggravated child abuse. Local law enforcement in Utah announced that a malnourished child had escaped from a residence connected to her business partner, prompting neighbors to call 911. Reports emerged that the child exhibited signs of physical restraint, wounds consistent with having had wrists and ankles bound, and was asking for food and water. Authorities investigating the situation found additional evidence suggesting that other children in the household might have also been subjected to harsh or neglectful conditions. The arrest shocked many who watched Ruby's content for years, even those who had questioned her methods but never anticipated a scenario of this magnitude. As details trickled out, mention was made of duct tape allegedly being used, significant undernourishment, and various forms of isolation. In response to the charges, her attorney at the time offered minimal comment, or focused on disputing the more serious allegations. Meanwhile, law enforcement officials pointed to indications that alleged mistreatment had been ongoing for a while. Evidence included statements from children, medical assessments, and accounts from people who claimed to have seen warning signs. Once the story hit national and international media outlets, countless articles dissected the timeline, from the days of 8 Passengers to Ruby's more recent work in counseling. Investigators also took an interest in the content Ruby and Jody shared through Connections, examining any links between their advice to parents and the alleged abuses that took place behind closed doors. Various YouTube critics who had previously flagged Ruby's sometimes severe approach weighed in with renewed discussions, reposting segments of old videos where she seemed to take discipline to extremes. In the weeks following her arrest, the legal proceedings began taking shape. Observers learned that multiple felony counts had been filed against Ruby Frank and Jody Hildebrandt, each count tied to different acts described in probable cause statements. Prosecutors laid out allegations centered on withholding food and water, physically restraining children, and inflicting emotional harm. In court documents, officials emphasized the level of deprivation, pointing to the children's condition as evidence that these were not one-off punishments, but rather systemic methods of control. Public reaction encompassed a range of emotions, including sadness, anger, and disbelief. Former followers posted lengthy videos sharing their own recollections of red flags they picked up when they used to watch 8 Passengers, though at the time many brushed off these concerns as typical overreaction from the internet. Others wondered how family vloggers with millions of viewers could exist in a space seemingly invisible to outside intervention until the situation reached a crisis point. Meanwhile, law enforcement agencies continued digging for additional witnesses, or data that might clarify the full extent of what happened inside the Frank household. As the case developed, there were also discussions about the role social media played in Ruby's public persona. Some followers had seen her as an upright parent, diligent about morality and discipline, while critics believed the veneer of normalcy concealed something far more troubling. Either way, the difference between her online brand and the allegations against her proved striking, and the story drew attention not just in Utah, but across a broad community of viewers who track and critique family vloggers. Eventually, Ruby appeared in court to respond to the charges. Reports from the courtroom described a subdued atmosphere as prosecutors presented evidence of child endangerment and neglect, and the defense counsel attempted to push back on the claims or argue for context behind certain incidents. On December 18, 2023, Ruby Frank admitted guilt on 4 counts of aggravated child abuse, although she maintained her innocence on 2 additional charges. Court documents revealed that she made her son work for multiple weeks under harsh outdoor conditions, leaving him with serious sunburns, and that she insisted her children were under supernatural influence. As part of her agreement, she accepted a prison sentence with each term running back to back. Initially, she was set to provide testimony in Jody Hildebrandt's trial, but Hildebrandt resolved her own legal battle on December 27 by pleading guilty to 4 charges of felony aggravated child abuse. Under a plea bargain, 2 of her charges were dismissed. On February 20, 2024, a judge handed down 4 consecutive prison terms for Frank, each ranging from 1 to 15 years. She will serve at least 4 years before being eligible for consideration of release. In the meantime, her channel is still terminated. For many, the abrupt transition from that seemingly orderly family routine to a case of child abuse felt jarring. Parents who once followed her advice expressed their shock. Longtime critics said they were horrified that the reality might have gone even beyond their worst assumptions. One thing everyone agreed on: the story that once revolved around baking sessions, school projects, and chore charts had transformed into a serious criminal investigation, one that would now define Ruby Frank's public image. In 2006, a channel was made called Crazy Croc. As the name suggests, it focused on uploading videos about crocodiles, albeit very sporadically, with only 6 being posted over the course of 13 years. Though the last video was a slow motion clip of 2 dogs running, this video will actually become more disturbing later on when you learn about who it was who owned this channel. It wasn't just any YouTuber, it was a leading expert in the field of crocodiles. Dr. Adam Robert Corden Britton, born in 1971 in Wakefield, West Yorkshire, carved out a reputation as a zoologist and crocodile specialist long before the darker details of his private life surfaced. After completing a bachelor's degree of science in zoology in 1992 and earning a PhD in 1996, he moved to Australia that same year. There, he married a fellow wildlife professional named Erin, and the 2 pursued conservation work, handling wild crocodiles and offering consultations. Their collective experience led to appearances on the BBC, including collaborations with none other than David Attenborough, and Britton even appeared as a featured expert on the Discovery Channel's Animal Face-Off series. For a time, his career seemed notable for his focus on wildlife advocacy. Despite cultivating this public image of a dedicated zoologist, Britton harbored a dark personal history. According to records, he had a sexual fixation on animals that may have started as early as the age of 13, when he allegedly molested horses. His predatory behavior escalated drastically over time. Under the guise of offering a safe home for dogs, he would browse Gumtree Australia, claiming he could provide care for the animals that needed rehoming. Instead, he subjected at least 42 dogs to unimaginable abuse, torture, sexual violence, and killing, an act that cut short the lives of 49 of those animals. And it's highly likely that the 2 dogs shown in his final video were actually his victims as well. His most horrific episode involved 9 puppies and their mother, which he recorded raping and eventually killing. He referred to this grotesque crime as 1 bitch, 9 pups, and circulated it on Telegram in what can only be described as an appalling display of cruelty. When law enforcement finally uncovered Britton's activities, the charges were both extensive and severe. He was arrested and ultimately faced 60 counts, encompassing bestiality, animal cruelty, and the possession of child pornography. In court, he pleaded guilty to every charge. On August 8, 2024, he was sentenced in Darwin. The punishment included 10 years and 5 months of incarceration, with a mandatory 6-year non-parole period, as well as a lifelong prohibition on owning or acquiring animals. Britton penned a letter claiming remorse and a desire for long-term treatment, but the presiding judge voiced doubts about the sincerity of that apology. suggesting Britton would have continued had he not been apprehended. The revelations about his actions led to his estrangement from his wife Erin, who left the marriage after learning of his crimes. This fall from grace was as swift as it was devastating for those who once admired his conservation work. Through his prominent roles on television and social media, Britton had carefully cultivated a respectable image that stood in stark contrast to the horrifying truth. The man who once projected an image of someone who loved the natural world as well as documenting it on film was really a soulless monster who took joy in harming and killing defenseless dogs. Jessica Worsham, who went by the Indigo Mystic on her YouTube channel, was born in 1978. She was known for exploring various facets of mysticism in her online content, a fascination she had nurtured since childhood. Her channel, launched in 2013, served primarily as a space where she presented her spiritual beliefs to the public. However, away from YouTube, Jessica's personal life took a complicated turn. She was unemployed and raising 2 daughters on her own following a divorce from her husband, Sean. In the early months of 2020, signs of a worsening mental state became evident. Although the exact reasons behind her decline remain unclear, her deteriorating well-being led to a series of troubling events that continued right up until it hit a boiling point. According to official records, Jessica was evicted from her home under court orders when the property owners decided they no longer wanted her there. In her frustration, she began issuing threats of violence against Georgia judges, accusing them of being part of a shadowy organization that harmed children. Despite lacking a fixed address, she insisted on keeping her 2 daughters with her, relocating frequently to short-term living arrangements. At first, people were generally sympathetic, offering her and the girls a place to stay out of goodwill, but these living conditions soon turned sour. Jessica often engaged in heated confrontations, both verbal and physical, with the homeowners, resulting in her eviction time and again. During this period, she supposedly coached her daughters to capture these altercations on camera. She then posted the footage on her channel, painting herself and her children as the victims. Observers noticed that her daughters seemed visibly upset in these videos, often breaking into tears while their mother continued to argue with those around them. Eventually, a court determined that Jessica was no longer fit to have custody of the children, ordering them to be placed with her ex-husband, Sean.
I really just wanted to get on really quick. I know I say that all the time. But today is a rather unfortunate day, to be honest with you. I'm actually going to court today against some people that are trying to take my children from me. The same people that took my home from me. The Jackson County court system. Yeah, they took my home from me and put me and my children out on the street and made us homeless, and now they're working against people to take my children from me. So we're going to court today, and I'm gonna need you guys to do some major praying for us, and honestly, for them. I really do feel more sorry for them and what's gonna happen to them than me and my children, because my children aren't going anywhere. They're not ever leaving my side, so good luck with that. But anyway, they know what's coming for them. They better.
In defiance of this ruling, Jessica fled with the girls, still uploading content whenever she could. On multiple occasions, she recorded calls to Sean, compelling her daughters to insult him and call him horrible names on camera. Around this time, she also acquired a handgun that she nicknamed Betty, showcasing it in her videos with a sense of bravado.
Got one thing to show you though, hang on real quick, just real quick. Just for any of y'all that might want to get wild, you know. I don't know, show your ass a little bit. This is Betty. Alright, get a good look. Now, any of y'all that think y'all might want to come at me, I got something waiting for you. And that's not a threat. That's a promise.
Her mental health continued to unravel. She frequently claimed she was the target of a coordinated campaign of harassment, displaying heightened aggression and paranoid thinking in her vlogs. On November 5, 2021, tensions reached a tragic breaking point. While staying at yet another home, Jessica became involved in a volatile dispute with the property owner. it escalated and she allegedly shoved an elderly individual to the ground. Law enforcement was called to the scene. Jessica's daughters had been prepped to film the confrontations, so by the time the officers arrived, a camera was already rolling. According to subsequent reports, she opened fire with her gun, shooting Deputy Lena Marshall. Marshall was critically injured and died 3 days later. In response, law enforcement shot Jessica on the spot, resulting in her immediate death. Her daughters later uploaded footage of the entire incident to her channel, though the videos would eventually be removed. One of her children later confirmed that they personally deleted all of the content. It's pretty much impossible not to feel sorry for her children, as they watch their mother slowly lose her mind and eventually reach a breaking point where she finally snapped and took the life of another person. Eric Matthew Frayne, who went by Vuko0064 on YouTube, hosted a channel centered on what he described as recreational military scenarios. His time on the platform was very brief. His earliest video was actually a repost from a Bosnian news outlet titled Bosnian Serb Army. It seemed to depict Bosnian and possibly Serbian troops during the Bosnian War. That upload garnered a notable amount of attention, surpassing 100,000 views and attracting over 200 comments from people curious about the footage. Encouraged by this engagement, Frayne went on to share another piece called Eastern Wolves Airsoft Unit at Honor the Brave. From the look of things, it focused on a staged military exercise, probably involving airsoft gear. His final video, LV Airsoft Operation Bosnia 92 Village Assault, appeared to be a recreation of a Bosnian training operation, though it remains unclear how closely it resembled actual military maneuvers. Taken together, these 3 uploads form the entirety of his online presence, showing glimpses of a small corner of the internet devoted to reenacting or simulating warfare. Nobody could have guessed that these videos may in fact have been Frayne preparing to carry out a real act of violence. In the fall of 2014, Frayne carried out an ambush on a Pennsylvania State Police barracks in Blooming Grove. The shooting resulted in the death of State Police Corporal Byron K. Dixon and the serious wounding of Trooper Alex T. Douglas. The brazen nature of this attack stunned both local residents and law enforcement, who scrambled to figure out why anyone would target state troopers in such a calculated way. Investigators soon began to piece together a picture of a man who combined self-taught survival techniques, a fascination with militant culture, and a simmering anti-government sentiment. Almost immediately after the ambush, Frayne disappeared into the sprawling wooded areas of the Pocono Mountains, prompting a high-profile manhunt. This search continued for weeks, with authorities combing dense forests, setting up roadblocks and following every lead they could get. Schools in the region closed intermittently out of fear he might be lurking nearby. Households remained on alert. The pursuit took on an atmosphere of tension that pervaded entire communities. Frayne's familiarity with wilderness survival made him difficult to catch, and he left behind various items, discarded food, rifle magazines, and handwritten notes that revealed he was moving stealthily through the terrain. During the weeks of the search, law enforcement officials warned the public that Frayne was likely armed and had proven not just willing but able to engage in lethal violence. Even local hunters and outdoor enthusiasts were urged to keep their eyes open and report anything suspicious. Frayne left behind handwritten notes that investigators said displayed anti-law enforcement sentiments, coupled with an unsettling admiration for historical conflicts in which smaller forces took on larger ones. It was as though he viewed himself as part of some personal rebellion, fueled by anger and an inflated sense of purpose. By late October 2014, the authorities finally apprehended him near an abandoned airplane hangar. Images circulated of state police leading him away in handcuffs, bringing an end to the violent manhunt that had cost millions of dollars and unsettled the entire region. Upon his capture, any illusions that he was merely a harmless survivalist or an eccentric outdoorsman evaporated. The entire saga became a case study in how someone's online identity, complete with videos and postings, might only scratch the surface of their real intentions. After his arrest, Frayne faced charges including murder and terrorism. The courtroom phase of his story revealed a range of evidence, from ballistic reports linking his rival to the bullets fired that night, to journal entries that spelled out his beliefs about law enforcement. Prosecutors characterized him as an individual who planned the entire ambush meticulously, seeking not just to harm officers, but to strike fear into the broader system they represented. Defense arguments touched on various mental health considerations, although nothing diminished the seriousness of the events as it unfolded. In the end, he was convicted and received a death sentence for the murder of Corporal Dixon and the attempted murder of Trooper Douglas. Throughout the trial, Many people revisited the YouTube channel where Frayne had once posted under the name Vugo0064, hoping to find some direct sign that he was on a track to commit a devastating crime. The videos remain relatively mundane on the surface, yet in the aftermath of the Blooming Grove ambush, those clips are viewed in an entirely different light. In the years since his conviction, the story of Eric Matthew Frayne has been overshadowed by other incidents. But his ambush and the Pennsylvania State Police continues to weigh on those directly affected. Families of the victims, friends of the troopers, and local residents remember the fear that gripped the Pocono region for over a month while a manhunt unfolded. Yanis Paraskakis, known online as Yanis Paraskakis 1, created a tiny presence on YouTube by filming casual outings around Crete with his friends. Some of those videos showed them firing guns or interacting with wildlife in ways that raised a few eyebrows among viewers. Beyond that, little is confirmed about the full scope of his online activities, though he did post material involving Qigong practices. All but 3 of the videos he uploaded are no longer available. What seemed to engage most of his viewers, however, were his exploration clips, in which he and his companions would roam around lesser-known parts of the island. One location that caught frequent attention was a cave tied to World War II, a bunker that many locals apparently overlooked, despite its historical significance. In 2016, he recorded himself, vlog style, wandering around this old bunker in the company of friends. At one point, the camera panned across bones scattered on the ground. The footage wasn't crystal clear on whether they were human remains, but some viewers noted how suspicious they looked. The conversation among his friends didn't help, with someone off camera making a cryptic remark along the lines of, "Is this where you left that old guy?" That single comment, coupled with the strange bones, sparked a flurry of speculation. Some people questioned whether Paraskakis might have been involved in something sinister before his name became widely known. Those remains were never recovered, and the cave later became part of the grim story that would emerge about him. The victim at the center of that story was Suzanne Eaton, an American scientist and professor of molecular biology working at the Max Planck Institute in Dresden, Germany. She vanished on July 2, 2019, while attending a conference at the Orthodox Academy in Crete. Reports suggested she went for a run and never returned. When her body was discovered several days later, she had been left in an old World War II bunker, and investigators established that she had died by asphyxiation. Before long, suspicion zoned in on Paraskakis as the prime suspect. During police questioning, he reportedly confessed to hitting Eaton twice with his car, rendering her unconscious, then loading her into the trunk before driving to that remote bunker. After raping her, he strangled her before leaving her to die inside the cave he had once casually explored for his YouTube audience. Additional details emerged indicating that Paraskakis had faced legal trouble in the past for similar incidents. On at least 2 occasions, people claimed he tried to run them down with his vehicle, but those cases never went anywhere. After he was arrested for Suzanne's murder, 5 more women stepped forward, saying he'd attempted to strike them with his car and then chase them down on foot. One woman claimed he managed to catch her and grabbed her by the neck before she was rescued by nearby joggers. Each account painted a picture of someone who had a habit of turning everyday roads into potential assault scenes. Once the trial for Suzanne's murder concluded, Paraskakis received a life sentence. Though his channel may have seemed like just another small corner of YouTube, featuring a few friends' adventures and scattered uploads on Qigong, it became forever tied to a cold-blooded killer. That cave he filmed so casually turned into an intriguing backdrop into the final resting place of a woman whose only mistake was going out for a run at the wrong time. Christian Omar Palma Gutierrez, who rapped under the name QBA, launched his online presence much like any other up-and-coming musician looking for an audience. His earliest uploads showed him delivering raw verses that had a gritty, unpolished feel. He occasionally filmed them with a simple camera or phone, capturing impromptu performances on the street or in a bedroom. Listeners, drawn by the uncensored tone, subscribed to his channel for the edge his lyrics provided. Long before anyone uncovered the full story, his tracks hinted at dark undertones, mentions of street life, conflict with authority, and admiration for powerful figures who operated outside the law. Off camera, however, QBA was living out a far more sinister reality than his fans could have imagined. In the spring of 2018, news outlets reported that he had been arrested on allegations linking him directly to the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, a criminal organization known for its extensive reach and violent methods. Stories soon emerged of a gruesome case involving 3 film students who had gone missing in the state of Jalisco. As investigators dug deeper, QBA's name came up as more than just a casual accomplice. He allegedly confessed to an active part in the cartel's operations, including dissolving bodies in acid, an action that moved him well beyond the margins of casual involvement and into the grim heart of organized crime. For those who followed him solely for his music, the revelations were hard to absorb. His YouTube channel had given him a public platform. He capitalized on that by uploading his own brand of rap, featuring lyrics that veered between defiance and cynicism. Some viewers believed he was just another artist using harsh realities to add authenticity to his persona. After the arrest, that line between art and truth vanished. Investigators scrutinized his posted content, poring over each track to see if anything in his verses suggested a deeper role in the cartel's operations. Fans began to question whether certain lines were more than just poetic hyperbole. Few people thought to challenge the disturbing imagery in his songs. The moment the authorities named him as a suspect in a high-profile homicide case, everything shifted. Once the deeper details reached the public, curiosity about his lyrics took on a new meaning. Some listeners replayed old videos, scanning for any sign of real involvement with violence, while others distanced themselves entirely, horrified that they had casually streamed an artist who was allegedly complicit in brutal acts. The case of the missing film students was what finally put him in handcuffs. As the story goes, these aspiring filmmakers were abducted and their remains were never recovered in full. QBA was identified as one of the individuals entrusted with ensuring no evidence remained. In multiple testimonies, he supposedly admitted to the process of dissolving bodies, which is a grim hallmark of the cartel's strategy to conceal crimes. Authorities described his level of cooperation as surprisingly direct, leading many to wonder whether this was a move to secure a more lenient outcome in court. His public confession, circulated through local media, stunned those who had known him only through rap battles and street corner music videos. During this period, QBA's social media accounts went silent, leaving behind music videos that once seemed like pure entertainment and now look more like cryptic windows into a world of brutality. His online fanbase dwindled, and comment sections filled with arguments and shock. Some supporters questioned the veracity of the police reports, insisting that their favorite rapper had been framed. Others believed that his songs and overall demeanor had been warning signs all along. Meanwhile, news outlets interviewed the devastated families of the film students, who wanted answers that no statement by QBA or his associates could provide. Though the legal system in Mexico can be complex, charges brought against him were severe enough that a brief jail stint or a quick plea deal seemed unlikely. He faced allegations tied to multiple homicides, not just the film students. Regardless of the outcome, the events surrounding his arrest changed the perception of local rap culture in some circles. A handful of commentators argued that rappers who glamorize violence might be closer to that world than listeners suspect. Others maintained that QBA was an outlier, an individual who crossed the line that most artists, no matter how raw their lyrics, would never approach. While awaiting whatever formal judgment the courts handed down, QBA stayed in custody. His channel remains a frozen artifact of a career that started on the margins of the music scene and ended in accusations of active involvement with one of Mexico's most infamous cartels.
What's up, guys? I just want to let you know that I came to a realization of something. I no longer want to follow Arnold or any other bodybuilder. I want to follow myself, you know? I want to actually believe in myself. I want to learn from other things, other people, other bodybuilders and stuff. But I just know that they're not me, you know? I know what's right for me. I don't need drugs. I know that they can change me. But the thing is, that's not being healthy, you know? Being healthy is what's natural, you know? What comes natural to you? You think steroids are natural? Who knows, you know? Who knows? You think steroids would be beneficial? Who knows? But for me, I know that I don't know, but I think that steroids really aren't for me. honestly. I used to think that I needed steroids to be a bodybuilder, to be this thing, to be this symbol, to be this lie, you know? All I need is really just to learn from everything. I'm learning from all the protein companies. I'm learning from all the bodybuilders, you know? I'm learning what did they do wrong? I'm learning where did they go wrong, you know? What do I think they did wrong? We're all the same though. Peace out. Peace.
Austin Hauruff, a former college student from Florida, initially seemed to be on a conventional path before the events that thrust him into the national spotlight. At one time, he posted videos to YouTube showing glimpses of his personal life, chatting about fitness goals, and sometimes just talking into the camera in that casual, off-the-cut style that many small creators adopt. He also sometimes posted music.
We trapping out the garage. Yo, it's Frosty the Blowman. It's Frosty. I make that hoe. Yes, sir. In Mexico. Yes, sir. I watch that show. I get a lot of sluts. While getting dough. I ate 10 nacho. 10 Taco Bell. I bought 10 Oreo. I bought 10 Oreos. At Texaco. I licked 10 pulls. In the North Pole. I saw 10 shows. On a stripper pole. There's a thin line between love and hate. I love to beat myself and masturbate.
Viewers who stumbled upon these uploads likely saw them as ordinary expressions of a young person navigating early adulthood. In August 2016, however, everything took a drastic turn. Late one night, Hauruff left a restaurant in Jupiter, Florida, under circumstances that remain somewhat unclear. According to reports, he had been acting oddly and stormed off for reasons family members could not fully explain. Shortly afterward, he approached a home in Martin County, where John Stevens and Michelle Michonne Stevens happened to be spending time in their garage. Without warning, Hauruff launched a brutal attack on the couple, killing them both. A neighbor who tried to intervene was also stabbed, though he survived. When law enforcement arrived, they discovered a scene unlike anything they expected. Hauruff was found on top of John Stevens, apparently biting at his face in what authorities described as a frenzy. Early rumors suggested he might have been under the influence of synthetic drugs, like flakka or bath salts, given the extreme nature of his actions, but official toxicology tests failed to confirm any typical substances. The incident's cannibalistic aspect drew massive media coverage, and outlets began combing through his online presence. That's when people discovered his YouTube videos. They weren't the polished output of a professional entertainer, just a young man filming himself and uploading the footage. There was nothing in them that directly foreshadowed the violent outburst, though some watchers later claimed they spotted hints of emotional distress. Others noted that he spoke with a certain intensity, but at the time, it didn't raise widespread concern. Once the horrific details of the attack came to light, the investigation turned to every aspect of Hauruff's life, his relationships, mental state, and any possible drug use. As part of that process, the videos he had posted on YouTube became part of the larger narrative about who he was. Friends and family provided statements indicating that he had recently acted strangely, though no one anticipated the level of violence he was about to unleash. Prosecutors portrayed him as dangerous, while defense counsel presented evidence of an acute mental breakdown or psychotic episode. During the legal proceedings, the focus shifted whether Hauruff was mentally competent and whether he understood what he was doing on the night of the murders. Psychiatric evaluations were brought in, painting a portrait of a troubled young man in the grips of what some professionals argued was a genuine break from reality. This angle fueled a wave of debates about accountability, insanity defenses, and the challenges of diagnosing someone who commits an act so extreme that it defies typical explanation. His own family members spoke publicly about changes in his behavior before the crime, mentioning mood swings and paranoia. In court, the cruelty of the murders was undisputed, but the motivation remained tangled in conflicting accounts of Hauruff's mental state. Some argued that no mental disorder fully explained the barbaric act of cannibalism, or his apparent detachment from reality in that moment. Others believed that this was precisely the kind of situation where a severe psychiatric breakdown could lead to inexplicable behavior. The legal questions pivoted on how to categorize that break, if it was a moment of genuine delusion, or if it sprang from more calculable aggression. As the case advanced, the YouTube material became a point of interest for those trying to understand him on a deeper level. Comment sections on his videos were filled with shock and speculation. Everyone wanted to find a clue, some line of dialogue or expression on his face, to explain how someone could carry out an atrocity so vicious. Yet the footage alone never provided a conclusive explanation. It mostly showed a standard college student concerned with muscles and physique, a person who may have been nursing hidden turmoil far beyond what any casual viewer could notice. He ultimately faced murder charges, and the judicial system wrestled with how to handle a defendant whose mental health defenses were as dramatic as the crime itself. Proceedings were repeatedly delayed by further psychological testing, legal arguments over competency, and disputes about whether an insanity plea applied. The severity of the violence, coupled with the cannibalistic aspect, made the story a media sensation. It stood out even in a world accustomed to sensational headlines, mainly because people found it difficult to reconcile typical internet vlogs with raw savagery. Though many of the case's details were dissected during hearings and reported by major news outlets, the final legal outcome involved Haurup being found not guilty by reason of insanity. In that sense, the typical rule of a conviction and prison sentence shifted instead towards psychiatric commitment, sparked debates in the public arena, with some observers struggling to accept that a crime so brutal could be attributed to mental illness rather than a purely criminal mindset. Over time, Haurup's name and face have faded from the daily news, but the community affected by his actions continues to deal with the aftermath, which spanned beyond those he directly harmed to everyone who tried to comprehend how this ordinary college vlogger turned into something far more dangerous. Adam Peter Lanza, who also went by the online handles Cultural Philistine and Fuck Comments, was born on April 22, 1992 in Exeter, New Hampshire. From early childhood, Adam showed difficulties in social settings, had a tendency for repetitive behaviors, and was ultimately diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. In an effort to find better special needs support, his family relocated to Sandy Hook Village in Connecticut. He enrolled at Sandy Hook Elementary School, where he made some strides in improving his communication skills. Yet he continued to wrestle with personal hygiene problems, often going through stacks of tissues and laundry. Nancy and Peter eventually divorced, which seemed to add further complications to Adam's personal life. After his time at Sandy Hook Elementary, he moved on to Newton Middle School, where he struggled academically and developed severe anxiety. Medical evaluations led to more diagnoses, including obsessive-compulsive disorder and Asperger's syndrome. Around that time, Nancy took it upon herself to homeschool him until he reached adulthood. While Adam once expressed an interest in joining the military, his parents were hesitant because of his ongoing mental health issues, so he instead enrolled at Western Connecticut State University around 2009. He set up his YouTube channel on September 7, 2011. His videos featured little more than a black background and his voice, discussing a broad range of contentious topics. He delved into religious beliefs, pedophilia, mental health matters, antinatalism, and more, often splitting these monologues into multiple installments.
Pedophilia is subject to numerous explicitly fallacious arguments which are often accepted as obvious truths. If the identical arguments were to be used against homosexuality, many people would see them for what they are, but the inclusion of children clouds people's vision. An example of this would be to say that pedophilia is unnatural and therefore should not be tolerated, just as with homosexuality. Another is how people say that since a child is physically unable to have coitus, all sexual acts with all children should be outlawed, just as with homosexuality. A third example is the assertion that pedophiles should not be tolerated because the DSM declares pedophiles to be mentally ill, just as it formerly arbitrarily did with homosexuality and arbitrarily removed. I don't know why anyone takes the DSM seriously. I will not address the dozens of such arguments for the sake of brevity, and will go directly toward the most common and most understandable argument, the idea that children are fundamentally incapable of consenting. Someone who argues in favor of this might concede that there are individual children who are capable of consenting, but that there is a considerable portion who are unable to do so. Because of this, they argue that there should, at the very least, be an age of consent law instituted to protect those children from being raped.
His final upload was on January 29, 2012. In online communities, Adam displayed a fixation on mass shooters. Going as far back as 2006, he participated in forums dedicated to the Columbine incident under the surname Smiggles, where he posted extensively about violent crimes. He was also involved in other web forums like Super Columbine RPG and Shocked Beyond Belief, which are no longer active. On Wikipedia, he edited pages about terrorism and shooting events under the username Canebread. Alongside his internet activities, he spent time at a local gun range with his mother, Nancy, practicing with various firearms. His family noted that he often chose isolation over social interaction, immersing himself in games like World of Warcraft, or delving deeper into his obsession with school shootings. One of the few times he ventured outside was to play Dance Dance Revolution at an arcade. In both his posts and YouTube clips, he made it clear that he detested the idea of seeking professional help, citing a deep-rooted resentment toward humanity and the medical diagnosis he had received. Early on the morning of December 14, 2012, Adam fatally shot his mother, Nancy, with a .22 rifle. He stole her vehicle and made his way to Sandy Hook Elementary School. Shortly after arriving, he used Nancy's Bushmaster XM15 to shoot through a window and gain entry to the building. Inside one classroom, he opened fire on 15 children and their teacher, leaving only one student alive. Staff members in a meeting room reportedly heard the gunshots, but were initially unsure of what was happening. When he encountered school employees, he shot them as well, with one individual surviving, pretending to be dead. He then moved to another classroom, where he fired under a desk at several students. A teacher named Victoria Soto is said to have confronted him in an effort to protect her class, losing her life in the process. Accounts differ on the exact sequence of events following that, but law enforcement arrived at the scene by 9:40 a.m. They entered the building, heard a final gunshot, and eventually found Adam's body. He had turned the weapon on himself. In total, 27 people lost their lives that day. 20 of them were children aged 6 and 7, 6 were staff members, and the first, of course, was Adam's mother. The immediate response across the United States was one of deep shock and grief, and the media offered around-the-clock coverage. Sandy Hook Elementary remained closed until January 3, 2013, with the building itself demolished in 2015 and a new facility opened a year later. Various political figures and news organizations used the shooting to push different arguments about firearms legislation and the impact of violent games. Certain fringe groups also generated conspiracy theories around the incident, while Adam himself was of course rightfully universally condemned for his actions. His father, Peter, later went so far as to say that he wished Adam had never been born. And that's the end of the video, folks. I don't really have anything to say this time. So be sure to like this video, leave a comment, subscribe if you're new, and maybe consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.